Mister.
Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a guide for round 3 of the Nations Cup with the 2016 Audi R18. And before we start the actual guide, I need to mention, since this is a hybrid car, you want to get as much battery power as you can before you start your actual lap. So you can bring yourself back to the turn before you enter the 2 hairpins and just use some braking while you got full throttle, as you see here. That way you can have a full battery as you start the lap, because it's actually going to make a difference as you go up to Eau Rouge. And now let's go ahead and start the guide. Look for the 100 meter board on the left, as you will brake right before you pass it. You want to try to hit the apex, get the car to rotate, and get it pointing to where you want it to go as soon as possible, because the moment you start to go full throttle, the battery is going to kick in and you won't be able to steer. Then take Eau Rouge at full throttle and shift up to 6th gear just as you start to climb the hill. As you prepare for the next turn, you can apply a bit of braking just before you apply full braking for this turn, so that way you can get just a tiny bit of charge. So you can sneak it in right here, and then you'll start to brake right before the curb on the left starts. Then for these turns right here, it's all about throttle control. Don't use any braking at all, avoid the bollards, and then you'll start to brake when the curb on the left starts. Gradually apply the throttle as you exit the turn, and you want to try to take full advantage of the width of the track. The reason why I say this is because you want to keep turning so you don't activate the battery, because with the battery, it activates when you're steering as little as possible. So by steering just over the limit, you won't activate the battery because you'll need it after the next turn. So then for the next turn, you want to brake just a little bit earlier, and you'll be trail braking a little bit to get that battery charge, and then you'll start to fully accelerate once you hit the apex. Then look for the black sign on the right, as that will be your braking and turning point, and you'll just be trail braking for a bit through this turn until you hit the apex. Then you gradually get back out on throttle and do not hit the AstroTurf. Then brake just before you reach the curb that is on the left, trail brake a bit through here. Then this part is all about throttle control. Do not hit the AstroTurf again on the right. And once again, brake before the curb on the left starts, and we want to be a bit careful on the throttle. Then you can use this darker patch of the AstroTurf on the left as your turning point, and if you do it right, you can take this turn flat out. Fast forward a little bit, take this turn flat out as well, and then you'll be looking for the 150 meter board on the left, as you'll start to brake right when you reach it. Do not take too much advantage of the apexes, as there's a little bump and that can spin you out. So just kiss the apex here again, be careful on the throttle, get the car pointing where you want it to go, and then fully accelerate, and that is the lap. Let's go ahead and talk about strategies. Before I start the race strategies, I want to mention you want to be a bit careful when you're starting your first lap, because your tires are going to be cold and it's really going to show as you come across the turn up ahead. And you want to be even more careful if you happen to be behind someone, as you won't have the downforce to make the turns as usual. So once again here, I'm not having the downforce because someone is in front of me and my tires are cold and I almost end up losing it. So yeah, so you just want to be careful about that, especially on your first lap or whenever someone is ahead of you. And yeah, let's go ahead and go to the actual strategies. When it comes to the strategies, there's 3 that I picked up on, and 2 of them are pretty interesting. So the first one is where you combine your medium tires with the hard tires, which is the required tires, by the way. That way you can get rid of the hard tire requirement from the start. But you're going to stick with them until the end of lap 7 or 8, depending on how your tires are as you approach those laps. And when I was doing this race, other than the things that was happening at the first lap, it didn't feel too bad running the combined tires in the R18, it actually felt pretty good. I know my pace was a little bit slower, so it's like in between the pace of like the medium tires only and the hard tires only, but I was still able to get some good lap times. So I was getting around 2 minutes and 1 second, and then when I changed over to the medium tires, I was able to get times that were below the 2 minute mark. Another thing is that you want to try to not refuel at all, as that's going to cost you more time. So when it comes to this race, over 15 laps, you want to try to use about 6.6% of fuel. You can keep an eye on the remaining laps on the bottom right hand of the screen on the fuel mapping menu, so you can have a good idea of where you're standing in terms of fuel. For me, on the fast parts, I'm on 1, and then for the twistier bits, that's when I go to 2. Sometimes I go to 3 if I feel like I need to save just a tiny bit more fuel, and most of the time I'm short shifting if I need to. Now in this clip, you're going to see me not necessarily doing that, and it's going to end up scaring me towards the end, because I ended up finishing with just, I think it was like 1% fuel left, so that was a bit scary. And going on to the second strategy, it's actually possible to no stop this race. So you start with racing hards only, short shift your way, adjust the fuel mapping. As long as you're using 6% of fuel each lap, then you should be good to go. But is it worth it? Not really, to be honest. So the thing is that even though the ones who go to the pit stop spend about 20 seconds there, your pace is not really going to justify it. So when I did the test race with racing hards only, not stopping at all, my best time was a 2:01.0, and I wasn't able to get into 2 minutes flat. Eventually my time is going to get worse. I'm going to get a 2:02, 2:03, or even a 2:04 if I happen to be behind someone, as my tires are deteriorating. So I wouldn't suggest doing the second strategy just because of that. The first strategy is a much better choice. And yeah, so the third strategy, which is the last one, is you start on mediums and then you eventually switch on over to the racing hard tires at the end of lap 7 or 8, depending on how your tires are doing. Try not to refuel if you can. And this one's interchangeable, so you can start on racing hards if you want. But once again, this is not the best strategy, as once you go on the racing hard tires, your pace is going to fall off. And yeah, that is pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. So this is Mr. MCA, wishing you a good race, and I'll see you in the next video.